What up, rap leaders? Welcome back to my channel. I'm walking down Hatfield Street again because I want to address a very current issue both in Guyana and in the rest of the world, and that has to do with the migration crisis, migrants all over the world. Yesterday I was on Regent Street, sitting at the corner of Albert Street and Regent Street, and this guy came up to me and started talking rapidly in Spanish, and he just assumed that I understood him. The reason is because there's so many Spanish people in Georgetown right now, Venezuelans mostly, but also from other places, Cuba and other Spanish-speaking countries in South America. There's so many Spanish-speaking people that certain behaviors are assumed to be Spanish. So if you're sitting on the curb, now people assume that you're Spanish because that's where Spanish people congregate and they meet, right? So this guy started talking to me in Spanish, and yeah, just passed him actually, this guy. Where are you from? Venezuela?
Venezuela. I am from Cuba.
From Cuba?
Yeah,
this is
Cuba, Venezuela.
So these are the guys I met.
Cuban, my name is Ariel.
Ariel.
Venezuela, Jose Goitia.
Jose.
Jose.
Okay. Yeah, so I was standing on the corner, and I passed these two guys. In fact, Jose is from Venezuela, and he just started talking to me rapidly. Just coincidence that I passed them again. So the fact is that there are so many immigrants in Guyana, Spanish-speaking immigrants, that I am being mistaken by the immigrants for one of their comrades. And I'm saying this because what you don't see in the news abroad is how Guyana, how Georgetown has become impacted by Spanish-speaking immigrants, particularly from Venezuela and Cuba, and a lot of Brazilians and so on, that it's noticeable when you walk on the street. Now, I posted a short video yesterday showing you the part of Regent Street that is now full of Chinese stores, right? If you go along Regent Street, eventually you find that the majority of stores are Chinese stores, because you can see the Chinese writing on the storefronts, right? You can go back and take a look at the shorts, pointing that out as one of the visible ways in which immigrants, in this case Chinese immigrants, are impacting Georgetown. And Spanish immigrants, both from Cuba and Venezuela, are becoming normal in Georgetown. Now, in that same vein, you have an immigrant crisis in America at the southern border, and you have an immigrant crisis in Europe. You know, a lot of Africans crossing the Mediterranean to get into Europe. What do all of these immigration or immigrant stories, situations have in common is that there is a common source, right? It's disruption in the economies, and in some cases just disruption in climate caused by climate change. It's a rebalancing of the world economy. What is missing is, of course, that immigration is also happening in the opposite direction. There are lots of Americans moving out of America, retiring to places like Mexico and Colombia and parts of Asia like Malaysia and Thailand, right? So what is missing from the whole immigration debate is a holistic understanding of how immigration is impacting the world. Here at the corner of Camp Street, Camp and Hadfield. So behind me, they're actually changing. They're putting up a new building. I'm going to show you that eventually as they build. This is behind me. You see the sign, Camp Street. It's the corner of Camp and Hadfield. And behind me, this is the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, right? The Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception behind me. Yeah, so what is missing is this holistic debate. What's missing from the whole immigration debate is the holistic understanding or discussion of what's happening globally, right? There are Americans and Europeans who are migrating to places where the dollar and the euro can stretch further, right? A lot of Americans are retiring to Mexico and Costa Rica because the US dollar goes further there. But that's not part of the debate. All that's being talked about is what's happening at the southern border. What's happened at the southern border is a situation that is caused by US sanctions on Maduro, right? So in 2018, Trump administration imposed sanctions on the Maduro government that effectively collapsed the Venezuelan economy, and we started immediately seeing an influx of Venezuelans into Guyana, right? There are lots of Venezuelans. People were impacted. People immediately got poor because the Venezuelan peso abruptly declined in value. It was worthless, right? You could see people showing their stacks and stacks of Venezuelan dollars like paper money was worthless. There were people coming to Guyana in 2019, 2018, 2019 and withdrawing Guyana dollars from their bank account here, right? And then going back and buying US dollars in Guyana and going back to Venezuela and selling US dollars. This is Kroll Street, right? Kroll Street and Camp Street. Just to walk down Camp Street, heading north. Yeah, so there were people, Venezuelans coming to Guyana and withdrawing money from their bank accounts, say at I think Scotiabank was allowing Venezuelans to withdraw money internationally from their accounts. They were withdrawing Guyana dollars and using it to buy US dollars and then selling those US dollars back in Venezuela. That was what was happening in 2018, 2019, 2020, right? So that is the real story behind the Venezuelan migrant situation in Guyana. And then eventually the banks in Guyana started clamping down. They stopped allowing Venezuelans to withdraw money from Guyanese banks. And at that point, the crisis in Venezuela worsened. It got worse and so on. So now we're at the point where we're seeing lots and lots of Venezuelans in the city, and they're at all the work sites. They're looking for jobs. Some of them are self-employed, selling, you know, from their own food stalls at the corners and so on. So that is the story of the immigrant situation in Guyana. Is that it's just as impactful here as it is in America. But it's only now that the collapse of the Venezuelan economy has reached the southern border. And so now it's a big part of the election campaign for 2024 in the US, and a big part of the, you know, controversy with sending migrants from the border to sanctuary cities. But that's what's happening, guys. That's the situation with the Venezuelan migrant crisis and the global crisis. What is missing from the debate is that it's not only America that's affected, it's every country. And Guyana, because we're now in a major growth spike in the economy, right? Because the economy is growing double digits by 30, 40, 50% annually. Not only are we seeing lots of migrants from Venezuela, we're seeing a lot of Trinidadians living in Guyana now, but Guyanese, Trinidadians and Haitians, and from every other Caribbean country, because we are part of CARICOM, and you don't need a visa to come to Guyana. You can in fact come here and start working tomorrow, because if you're a Caribbean national, that is in fact the value of being a member of CARICOM. You can come to Guyana from anywhere in the Caribbean, get a job or open a business and start doing business immediately. And for that reason, lots of people, in fact I see a lot of people here from Nigeria, from Ghana, right? So when you talk about immigration, what is missing from the whole controversial political debate in America is that it is in fact a global situation. It's something that's happening and affecting the entire world, and Guyana is not exempt. Here we're at the corner of Robb Street, right? This is Robb Street, looking at behind the bank of, right, that's the Teleperformance building behind me, looking Robb Street's west, east rather. Behind me is now Robb Street West. But let me conclude this little discussion about immigration in Guyana by saying, one is that a big part of it is a result of the foreign policy, US foreign policy, the impact of US foreign policy on the economies, and that is actually driven by US companies, US corporations, how they tend to do business and the way the US government backs them up, right? Because in fact the whole controversy with Venezuela and the US collapsing Venezuelan economy has to do with Venezuela deciding to kick out of ExxonMobil, to kick ExxonMobil out of their oil and gas sector. And that caused the US government to respond by putting sanctions on the Venezuelan economy and collapsing it. And this is what has led to the global migrant crisis, which involves Venezuelans now at the US border. So guys, if you are a member of this channel, if you're a subscriber to Raffle Nation, I just want to give you what the perspective is from somebody who doesn't live in America anymore and who sees the immigration crisis from a different vantage point. That in fact it's a global crisis. It's affecting many countries, not just America. It's affecting Guyana too. And we want to take that into consideration and take what they're saying about it with a lot of salt. This is Church Street. Behind me, that's the Ursuline Convent and the St. Rose's High School, the new St. Rose's High School. I think I gave a tour of that recently. And up this street, Church Street, they started rebuilding St. George's School, which was destroyed by fire. But that's it, guys. That's what's up. I just wanted to give you my assessment of the global migrant crisis and how the migrant crisis is affecting Guyana. I'm gonna stop here and continue. In the next video, I'm gonna talk about inflation, which is also a problem, and I'm gonna tell you how inflation is affecting Guyana and Guyanese. So that's what's happening. Share this video with friends and family around the world. Let people know what's happening with immigration here in Georgetown, Guyana. Later.